Hello and greetings, New Earth family. Thank you so much for tuning in today to the Raising New Earth virtual retreat and summit. I'm Danielle Ashé, coming to you from the beautiful jungle of Costa Rica, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. I want to thank Arity Green for gathering us all together and for bringing this vision forth during this time of great uncertainty. These conversations are more important now than ever. So, before we begin, I would like to start by taking a few deep breaths together so we can all ground into our bodies and get present. So I invite you to close your eyes and just begin to notice your breath. And on your next inhalation, see if you can deepen your breath any amount more. And then exhale fully and completely. And on your next inhalation, see if you can breathe and extend the breath and extend the inhalation any amount longer. And you can even make a sigh as you exhale. And one last big inhalation. Good. Wonderful. So keeping your eyes closed, if you've opened them, close them once again. And in your mind's eye, I want you to visualize a big roaring fire. And walk towards this big fire that you see in your mind's eye. And as you get closer, begin to recognize some of the faces that are familiar. Faces of people that you know and love. Perhaps faces of the people that have given previous talks during the summit. And we'll begin to gather together around this big fire in a circle, taking a moment to exchange glances and smiles. And grab hands with the people who are next to you, whether the faces are familiar or unknown, whether it's just your first time seeing this person. Take a moment to connect and feel us united in this circle. Even though we're in all different parts of the world, feel us join together with one intention, with this beautiful fire burning, with the intention to raise new earth together. Taking a moment to value and honor each and every person that has shown up here, and even those that aren't here with us today. And with that, I invite you to continue to keep your eyes closed if that feels good to you, if that's possible. And just get really, really comfortable. So if you can lay down, then go ahead and lay down. If you can find more comfort in however you're seated at this time, do so. And I invite yourself to fully receive and remember the information that I'm going to share with you in a story. I'm going to share a sort of guided meditation, guided story, guided visualization. It's a combination of all of them actually with you. So I want to begin by taking us way back, all the way back to the time before our souls were even born. Back to the time when we were all existing as one with source consciousness, with infinite consciousness, with God, with creator, with however it is that feels most comfortable to you, with whatever you resonate. But envisioning back to that moment, that series of moments, but that state of being, that state of existence. And just take a moment here with your eyes closed to feel into that state of being. Pure, infinite potential. Pure oneness. Pure connection. And then the time came for us to come forth into physical form, to come into these bodies, to come onto this planet, and to experience existence in a new form. However, upon entering into this new form, each of our souls experienced a collective amnesia, if you will. So, becoming separate from source, becoming individuated, becoming a soul in a physical body, we forgot this sense of connectedness and this pure potential that we once existed as. And with that forgetfulness emerged the core wound of humanity. And that is the illusion of separation from God, from source, from the collective consciousness. And from that state of fear, feeling alone, feeling separate, came these feelings of fear and lack and scarcity and questioning, not knowing our purpose, not feeling safe. And from that place came actions driven with these vibrations, with these frequencies of fear, of lack, of scarcity. We forgot who we were. And those of you that are here right now listening to this talk, attending this summit, are ready to remember. And this is what brings me to invite you to take a look at the bigger picture, take a look at the ways in which this core wound, this illusion of separation and fear has brought about actions that are out of harmony, out of alignment with the whole. So when we look at the systems that are in place today in our society, the greed, the harm of Mother Earth, the harm of one another, the oppression, the exploitation, realizing that all of these actions come from this forgetfulness and the fear that comes with forgetting who we really are. The fear that comes from not seeing each other as reflections of ourselves, and not seeing ourselves as physical and body form of God, of source, of creator, of consciousness, and not treating one another and not treating ourselves with this level of love, compassion, respect, trust, and not having a sense of faith and trust that God is with us, that we're not alone, that we are supported in our fullest authentic expression, in our desires, in our purpose, as we are the expansion of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness, God being in physical form. And so from these systems that have created this sense of competition and oppression and all these fear-based actions comes trauma. I mean, the core wound is the original trauma, but then the individual traumas that come from existing within a system that is based in fear and rooted in fear, that continues to perpetuate traumas as souls in physical form. And then as individuals, with added trauma, in addition to the core wound, we find ourselves taking action from a place of fear instead of love, taking action from like reaction instead of creativity and inspiration, from defensiveness, defending ourselves, to offensiveness, from fight or flight mode, from this pure survival instinctual mode, because we've forgotten. And so as we raise new earth together, as we evolve together, it's important to begin to remember what we really are, and to embody love, to embody creativity, inspiration. And once we begin to do that, the dormant parts in our DNA become activated. So they become awakened. And from this activated, awakened state of being, we begin to take action that's in harmony with each other, with Mother Earth. We begin to feel the trust and the faith and the support from God within us and without us, or outside of us, which enables us to bring our dreams to life, to create more harmony and positivity here on this planet. Remembering that what we witness, everything that we witness, is an expression of God, including ourselves. And to know that we are God experiencing itself through our filter of perception, whether that's clear or whether that's full of limitations or distortions, because of fear. And when we can see, when our vision becomes clear, the year 2020, clear vision, we begin to live in alignment with the truth of who we are, to embody that Christ consciousness, some call it God consciousness, whatever resonates with you. Please don't let my use of God or Christ throw you off. It's not associated with any sort of dogma or religion. This is just our pure state of being. This is our natural state of beingness. Because our purpose here, our divine purpose on this earth, the reason why we chose to come forth from source, the reason why we chose to come into these unique individual bodies is because we are the evolution of consciousness and of humanity. And the way we fulfill this dharma, or divine purpose, is by actualizing our fullest, most authentic expression and sharing it with the world. Because as I mentioned before, we are all reflections of God, and we're here to, as God witnessing itself. So the more we're actualized and the more we're fully expressed, the more we can experience the infinite nature and the beauty and the love that is God. Take a moment to take a deep breath and take all of that in. I'm hoping that this is landing and integrating. And so why am I sharing this? It's because I found it's very helpful to begin to see the bigger picture, to make sense of everything that we're experiencing, to delete the conditioning that the systems, the fear-based systems in our current society are based on, and that we've been taught, and that have been the source of a lot of our traumas. So that we can understand what's really going on and what's really happening from the higher perspective. Because it's easy when we're in these physical bodies to forget. And I find that grounding existence in this greater knowing helps to make it so much easier to remember and to take action from this place of love and remembrance and connection. And to see beyond the illusion. I mean, it's a beautiful illusion. And it is very real in many senses, like the 3D reality, but the illusion is the fear that we are alone, that we are not connected to God. And I'm also sharing this because this knowing, this remembrance, helps to alchemize any fear or any trauma that we have. And another big picture thing to remember that's very important is that that part of evolution, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, part of evolution is actually forgetting. And we will likely remember these things for a moment, and in another instant we'll forget. And traumas tend to trigger the reaction and the forgetfulness. And the reason for this forgetting, the reason for this contrast, the reason for this fear, for this pain, for this suffering, for this oppression and greed and all of these things, this that some may refer to as shadow, is to actually help us to expand. Because when we know the opposite of what we are, who we are, when we know the opposite of what we want, when we experience a contrasting experience, we can then better know and better feel what it is that's the opposite, and head in that direction, that's the expansion, and the contraction is the fear and the forgetting and the everything that's associated with that fear. So to navigate with this knowing, coming up against these things and fears, instead of getting getting caught up in them, getting lost and getting discouraged, with this bigger picture, this bigger awareness, this remembrance of who we are, we can feel into and move into the contraction and the fear and the trauma, to then come out, to dive deeper and rise higher, to go darker, to then emerge brighter. So, I wanted to ask this earlier, but with what I've shared so far, does any of this resonate? Does any of this land? Do you remember? If you do, type in the comments below yes. Feel free to type what it is that resonated with you, or what it is that you remember about what I've shared. I would love to hear. Whether it's right now, whether it's after this is over. But I do want to make sure to keep this conversation going, so we can support each other with this remembrance and with this alchemical process of healing, transforming, transmuting fear, trauma, and the illusion into our fullest creative expression, out of reaction into inspiration and creative expression. So good. So this story and what I've shared with you, or this guided meditation, whatever it is meant to act as a catalyst. So, everything may not land immediately, but just receiving this transmission, just hearing this and knowing this, is going to begin to awaken and activate a new level of awareness within you, and so that you can show up in your true nature as who you really are, and so that you no longer have to live, or so that you can live it with less fear, because fear is always somewhat there, but then the courage and the awareness allows us to transmute it and turn it into gold. And actually, I wrote a post about this a couple of days ago, but that the fear is actually where the gold lies. So it's important to really pay attention to the challenges that you face, the fears, the traumas that you've experienced, the triggers, the things that trigger you, because within those, that's what's most important for us to transmute, to become the fullest expression of the divine. So instead of avoiding or distracting or denying or suppressing any fear that you may be experiencing, I invite you to become more intimate with it and to get to know it, and to face it, because that is also a big part of your soul's purpose here on earth, and where your genius, your unique genius and your gifts lie. They lie there, in the challenges, in the traumas, in the pain, and in the fear. So getting really in touch with that is actually, if you want to fulfill your purpose, that's where your energy and focus must go. So I want to share a little bit with you about my personal story. All that being said, so I was living in Chicago. I'm born and raised in Chicago, and I went to university there, and I worked a job at a university there once I graduated. I got a master's degree. I did all these things that society had told me needed to be done to be safe and secure and successful. And so a lot of that action was actually taken out of fear, more so, out of the desire to, or actually more, not the desire so much as the belief to be accepted. And lo and behold, 3.5 years after working at this job, right after I had completed my master's degree, actually while I was completing my master's degree, I started to feel this feeling of depression and this feeling of being stuck or stagnant. And I'd done all these things, but they weren't really bringing me true sense of purpose and a true sense of fulfillment. But I didn't know what my purpose was or what to do to achieve it. And so one thing I had always known is that I wanted to become fluent in Spanish, and I wanted to travel and get out of the United States to experience other cultures, to experience other realities, if you will. And that was the thing, is I had student loans to pay off, which is why I got this job. And it was almost like I was stuck in debt to this degree that I had gotten, because I thought that's what I needed to do to be happy, when it really wasn't making me happy. So it was like, oh, this feeling of being stuck. So as I was in my yoga teacher training, I was lying in Shavasana in corpse pose, and 3 months prior I had gone to a retreat in Costa Rica, a women's retreat, and I fell in love with Costa Rica. I connected with so many people here in this part of Costa Rica where I am actually. I'd connected with so many people that were so inspiring and that I had so much in common with, and a lot of them were had relocated here from the United States or other countries all over the world. And so as I was lying in Shavasana, completing my yoga teacher training, I just received this message to quit my job, to just take some time, connect to nature, find the answers there, take a break from the hustle and bustle of Chicago. After I'd done all this hard work, getting a master's degree while I was working 9 to 5, getting my teacher training while I was working 9 to 5, I needed to reconnect to myself. I needed to find myself and find my purpose. So I left, and I came here to teach yoga. I taught my first yoga class here actually, and I just fell in love, and I wanted to stay, and so I did. I did travel to other places because I was like, oh, well, there's still other parts of the world that I want to see. Maybe there's somewhere else that I want to live. And all of that was beautiful, and it ended up bringing me back here to Costa Rica. And the further removed from society in the United States, and all the expectations and all the systems in play, a lot of them which kind of keep you, a lot of the systems don't give you the freedom. It seems like freedom, it's kind of like, again, another illusion of freedom, but there are certain things that you just have to do in the United States and in other parts of the world, and here as well in Costa Rica, but here I found it different. Seeing the abundance of fruits and medicinal teas and plants growing wild that were edible, which, those exist in the States as well, but here there's just a whole new level to where it doesn't feel like one has to be so dependent on a certain way of being in certain systems in order to survive. And as I sort of deepened into this, being held by Mother Nature, and I began to reconnect to my true nature, and I began to remember. But along with this remembrance, it was like deeply healing and liberating, and I began to feel more sovereign. But I also had the opportunity to dive even more deeply into the traumas and the wounds, and I could see more the conditioning and the programming and the ways of thinking and being that were still really deeply rooted in me and deeply embedded within me. They were actually taking me out of the present moment, out of my joy, and out of really fully being able to enjoy the experience of being here and just entrusting um, in following my heart. So it was kind of like this struggle, this internal struggle. And so I had my descent into the darkness, somewhat of a dark night of the soul, it can be referred to, where I was forced to come face to face with my traumas and my fears. You know, there was nowhere to like run or distract from them or hide. You know, here I've been living a very pure lifestyle without really a lot of the distractions and the conveniences of modern life. And so again, without that, there's all of the space and all the opportunity to really have to sit with the discomfort, which is not easy, but it is a very beautiful thing. And I realized also that my ancestors, my lineage, my legacy, my ancestors had actually, you know, being of African descent, being a descendant of enslaved people in the United States, the fact that at one point my ancestors were living in harmony, similar to how I live here in Costa Rica now, in Africa, and then were taken from Africa and brought here to the United States to then build the systems of inequality and injustice, and let me pause there. Not all of the systems are bad. Not everything is bad, but these fear-based systems, you know, like it was literally built off of human trafficking, you know, stealing people to bring them to build a system and treating them in such a way. So the whole society in the United States was built off of that. So it came to a point where I didn't know why I was guided to travel. I didn't know why, you know, or where I was taking this leap and where it would take me. In the past, I had done all these things, you know, which were actually done out of fear, to avoid this, to avoid that. I was doing all these things. And taking this step to Costa Rica was actually one of my first steps in the direction of what I wanted, what I really wanted, that wasn't rooted in any type of fear. So I realized that it was the guidance of my ancestors that said, okay, you are no longer indebted to this country, to this system. Your liberation has so much to do with leaving this land, claiming your freedom. And so I did, and so that's what brought me here. And this environment gave me the space to heal from a lot of the trauma and the pain of coming from descendants of enslaved people and living in a system that still is oppressive in many ways, not only to people of color, indigenous people, women. I mean, I actually see this system as very oppressive to all beings, but you know, as we have our souls that have incarnated into these individual, differentiated, diverse expressions of God, we have our own traumas and struggles in a collective sense and in an individual sense. So collectively, race, gender, you know, have some shared traumas and stories. Generations have some shared traumas and stories, but so here, leaving that land, leaving that, like, claiming my freedom, gave me the space to actually begin to heal, to no longer harbor the anger and the resentment for the wrongdoings. And this story that I've shared with you at the beginning is the story that has allowed me to find forgiveness and compassion and some sense of understanding why this happened, why these actions happened. And again, that traces back to the core wound of humanity. These people, you know, were affected by forgetting from the separation, the illusion of separation from source, coming into physical bodies. And so they acted from a place of fear and survival and lack and scarcity, and did harm because of it. But I no longer want to carry that burden, that wound with me, and to perpetuate the fear because of the pain and the trauma. And so there came a point where the pain of feeling separate, butterfly just flew past, the pain of feeling separate grew greater than the pain of liberation, of forgiveness. And it's when I went down into this sort of dark night of the soul, of healing, of alchemy, what I dug and what came forth was this remembrance of this story, of this truth that I shared with you today. And so I hope that this story can also bring a sense of peace and understanding for you as well, so that you can also move forward with forgiveness and remembrance of love, and this knowing that we are all divine expressions of God and creator and source, and part of our evolution and expansion was this forgetting, was this fear. So that fear served a purpose. As much as there's ancestral trauma that I've inherited, as much as the pain that I know that my personal ancestors have experienced and that I've experienced personally in my lifetime, I now know that this pain does serve a purpose, that this is part of a process. And the easy way is to be angry and to be fearful and continue to perpetuate this cycle. And the more, I wouldn't say difficult, but the work, the easy way is to just perpetuate it. But then the work comes with feeling it, transmuting it, alchemizing it, forgiving it, and healing it. And it's worth it because there's this sense of liberation that comes from the work that is done, the healing work that is done. And it allows us to exist in this state of awareness, of pure consciousness, non-resistance to what is, acceptance of what is. And that acceptance of what is not, knowing that this is part of creation, expansion, evolution of God, and knowing that it's not okay, but knowing why it is the way that it is, and moving forward to shift it, to transmute it, and to alchemize it in a very empowered, loving way. So instead of reacting to it, we're creating from an inspired place of, well, this is what we don't want. We've experienced what we don't want, which allows us to now see and realize what we really do want. And in some ways, without this knowing what we don't want, it's difficult to know what we do want. And so evolution is not a straight line. There's expansion and contraction, just like the DNA helix, this spiral, this swirl, in and out, light and dark, up and down, which is also in correspondence with the laws of nature, the universal laws of nature. That's been another beautiful thing about being here in Costa Rica, is being able to witness this in the growth of the plants, in the behavior of animals. So much has been also shown to me, and so much remembrance has come to me from nature herself. So, what's most important to take out of all this? One of the things I would say is that separation from God and Source is an illusion. The fear that we're experiencing is, in a sense, an illusion as well, or a distortion. The distortion being the illusion that we're separate is where the cause of fear comes from, right? And that then knowing that only love is real, and that anything else that we're experiencing is a distortion, anything other than love. And with that, oof, wow, is my invitation to you to begin to put this into action, to begin to ground into embodied, loving awareness, like this embodied, loving state of awareness and remembrance. Because this, again, is what's going to help us to evolve out of fear into more love. And along the way, there will be the contrast of fear, but we move more in the direction of love and expansion. Our DNA, new parts of our DNA that are lying dormant, that are asleep, are awakened and are activated. And, our superpowers, our creativity, our inspiration, our energy is more fully actualized. And so, to close, I would like to invite you to create your own simple action with intention. So this is, action with intention is ritual. And so I would like you to begin with just like something so simple that you can involve in your daily routine. It can be adding something to something that you already do, to invite this remembrance into your awareness every day, to tap into, the pure love, pure consciousness, pure oneness, to be able to see and witness all that is as, through the eyes of God, through the heart of God. Allow this action to influence your state of being, and to be to take it with you throughout your day as you interact with people, as you make your decisions with what you're purchasing, with what you're supporting, with the words that you're speaking, with what you're putting into your body, with how you're moving your body and using your body, with a feeling of trust and faith, instead of fear, and to be able to step into your full expression, knowing that you are fully supported, that you are not alone, that God is always with you, God is always within you, God is always all around you. So I invite you to take a moment, and if your eyes are still open, or if you want to close them again, to tap into, it can be really the first thing that pops into your mind. Is it a movement? Is it a mantra? Is it something you can say? Is it something you can write? Is it something you can add into your smoothie in the morning or into your tea, you know, like a sprinkle of remembrance, a movement of remembrance, something that's dedicated to this knowing. Is it a prayer? It can also be something that you do, you know, right before bed or at any time throughout the day. But I allow you to, or I invite you to take some time, if nothing came up for you instantly, to sit with this, but don't sit too long, because I would love for you to start this tomorrow or today. But please share with us. We want to hear, maybe someone who is struggling to think of something will hear something that you are doing and will be inspired. You know, we're here to inspire each other. We're reflections of each other. So please share afterwards. Please post either in the Facebook group. You can post in the comments on this YouTube video. If you're not really into Facebook, or you can post both places, but do share with us what you come up with, and I really look forward to hearing them, and I will share mine as well there. What else? I also want to share that and really reiterate that unhealed trauma is what really keeps us in a state of fear. So I'm calling this, you know, this ritual is also like this. Actually, this is separate from the ritual. This is the sort of evolutionary alchemy practice. So this is a practice of, as I mentioned before, moving into the fear instead of being distracted, instead of avoiding it, to go into it, to then allow your challenges, allow your fears to shape you and mold you, and to reveal your genius. Your genius lies there. So this is another piece that I can invite you to take action upon and notice. You know, it really just takes awareness of when you are reacting from a state of fear in life. So something that you can do to start to practice this is to just take notice of, like I said, of the moments, and just gain more awareness. Yeah, it's a powerful practice to be with it, to invite it in, like invite it in for a cup of tea, invite it in, ask it questions, you know, peel back the layers. And when you get to the core is where the healing happens, is where the transformation from fear into love comes. Let's see, is there anything else that I want to cover? Wow, I feel that was a lot. And I hope that, I trust that you received exactly what you needed to receive today from this talk. And I am here if you have any questions, if you have any reflections. I'm more than happy to be a witness to whatever comes up for you. And I thank you again for being here with the summit, for tuning in to this particular transmission, for choosing to raise New Earth. Just choosing to show up here today is actually a huge action in the right direction. And just continue to show up, and I look forward to connecting with you more deeply in the Facebook group, or you can also contact me personally too. I'm always open to hearing from you. Mwah. Love you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. See you out there.